What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you for tuning in. Exciting show today. I always say that. Exciting show today. Joe Tripp, chef owner of Harbinger in Des Moines, Iowa, is on. Joe, thanks for taking some time.
Hey, thanks for having me on today. I'm really excited to be here.
You know, I'm excited. I said it multiple times already. However, fermentation. For anybody who knows me, you know fermentation. I'm partially fermented myself. You know, maybe that's too much alcohol, but a lot of it has to do with food fermentation. Over the years, it's been a big thing. You and I connected in a meaningful way, had an amazing meal at your restaurant. We got to geek out, and we speak the same language. So we're going to get into that. We might lose some people as we go crazy down this rabbit hole of fermentation. That's okay. It's for you and me and the handful of nerds like us. So we'll talk about that. Before we get into kind of that story, tell people specifically Harbinger. What's that all about?
Yeah, so Harbinger's a chef-driven, locally or a hyper-local restaurant on the historic Ingersoll district of Des Moines, Iowa. I opened it about 3 years ago, and we're going strong.
I love it. Cool spot. I really like too. The first thing you walk in, the kitchen is like right there. Like instantly, you feel the energy. You can hear the banter in the kitchen. I was struck by that right away. So check it out. If you know, you know, and if you don't, get there. It was on everyone's top list when I came through Iowa last year, mostly doing brewery tour stuff, checking out and connecting with a lot of brewers out here as that scene has exploded. I said, where's the three places I have to go? And you were on everybody's list, and rightfully so. So that's great. All about acknowledgement.
That's awesome.
So, right? It's the best you can be. If other people in the industry say this is the spot, that's the spot. So
that's what we're shooting for.
That's it. Take us back. For you, when did you first catch the hospitality bug? How'd you get into this crazy industry?
You know, I graduated from the University of Iowa in 2008. There was a really bad market for getting a job, and I was tired of school. I didn't want to go to grad school and continue my education.
What was your degree in?
Psychology and philosophy. So really not much you can do. Yeah, not much you could do with that on the job market right out of school, especially in 2008. But I had been cooking, mostly breakfast restaurants, nothing too serious. And I really liked it. So I figured I'd take a gap year. And that gap year has turned into a career. I ended up moving to Colorado and working out in Denver for Alex Seidel and under Chef Matt Vodder. It was a great opportunity, great experience. Those guys taught me a lot of what I know and really put the passion into me that helped me develop what we've developed.
Yeah, they'll do that. And between Fruition, which is legendary, and Alex won a James Beard for his work over the years there, and Mercantile, their farm. Alex and I have been talking a lot about what's happening at their farm. So they just connect the dots between like the land all the way to the plate in a very meaningful way. And I know that really resonated with you. And so then you come back to Iowa and say, I'm going to open a restaurant. How did that come about?
I moved back to Des Moines without really the intention of sticking around here. I ended up getting a job for a place called Alba under Jason Simon, who he was a James Beard nominee in, I want to say 2015, if my memory serves me right. And I quickly grew into the sous chef role as they opened their second restaurant and eventually took the kitchen over. And it just kind of kept going, and I got to the point where I'd been nominated twice myself as the chef at Alba, and I was ready to do something. I approached Jason and said, "Hey, I'm ready to do my own thing," and he partnered up with me. He's been extremely supportive ever since. So
he's actually a partner in the restaurant in Harbinger.
Yeah, yep. Oh. Jason and I opened that as a mutual partnership, and he's been giving me the ins and outs of the business, the money side of things. And it's been very insightful. Certainly helped me survive these current times for sure.
I mean, the business is most of it. The cooking tends to be the easy part, tends to be the part that, unfortunately for you, you probably get to spend less time on than you'd actually want to, but it empowers that everyone else can because you still have a business. So I think that's super important. So let's talk fermentation. I just want to get into it. I'm chomping at the bit here. Fermentation. Hell, let's give people a little definition. When somebody says fermentation, food fermentation, they go, Joe, what the hell does that mean? What's kind of your answer to that? I'm sure you get asked that question all the time.
Yeah, fermentation is a process of preservation, usually through a development of acidic acids, lacto fermentation. There's a bunch of different ways to approach it, but we look at it as a means of preservation, first and foremost. And secondly, it's a way to stretch our product and make sure that we're really using everything that we have coming through the doors, because we use expensive product. So it's a great way to use those mushroom scraps, the berry tops, and everything, and also as a flavor enhancer. So it really does expands our repertoire quite a bit just to have it in there.
Yeah, flavor enhancer is something that I've noticed a lot. I think it's very interesting when we talk about the flavor of it, because you're amplifying what feels so often as the purest form of that ingredient. And I didn't know that early on in the game. I mean, kimchi was really one of the first things that like got me into it and interested in it, and a couple hot sauces. Those are just by design of the base recipe are so intense already. I didn't understand the impact that the fermentation was having versus the ridiculous amount of chili and garlic and gochujang and things like that. So was there a first time for you when you realized, wow, this tastes more like cabbage, more like a radish than a radish does? Because it feels like that sometimes when you ferment something. You bring out a whole nother level, especially umami, that adds depth to it. Was there one ferment or an item that you tasted or an unlock for you kind of in that flavor enhancer side?
Recently we've kind of gotten away from fermenting for the sake of fermenting, which I think is the way I see a lot of people doing it. Now we use it as another way to push the flavor we have going on. So recently we've been making a fermented mushroom vinaigrette, which is a dressing that we use for a lot of potato dishes, a lot of mushroom dishes. And it doesn't necessarily stand out as a component as itself, but it really intensifies the mushroom flavor from the mushrooms that we have. So like we just cleaned, a bunch of chanterelle mushrooms we found in the woods this week, and it was, what are we going to do with all the trimmings and all the stalks or stems from them? And fermentation is always a great way to make use of that and to amplify, what naturally comes out of the mushroom.
Yeah, the ability to take a single ingredient, and we talk about this with salt a lot. Like you add salt in layers, right? It's ingrained in us because it's going to have different impact on flavor, but also on texture and cooking. And so I think about that with fermentation as the ability to say, how can I get the most mushroom into this mushroom dish? And fermentation allows you a massive opportunity to do that. And so if you're talking about, let's just go with Iowa. I mean, one of the ingredients that I really, really miss from being in Iowa is the morel mushrooms. Yeah. I mean, they're the size of your fist out here. It's unbelievable, and just very simple, like dipping a little bit of breading and frying butter is kind of the classic here, which I'm a big fan of. And I think about a dish like that, and I imagine the layers that you could create of taking the ugly bits and the stems, and then all of a sudden creating a little ferment out of that and amplifying, and all of a sudden like it takes it to another place. Talk about that. Talk about the ability to make a mushroom more complex than a mushroom.
Well, it's bringing that natural umami and acidity out of the ferment, right? So the chanterelle mushrooms that we just fermented will have a vibrant electric flavor that you wouldn't really pull out of the mushroom naturally. Like you're not going to saute a chanterelle mushroom and get this natural acidity and umami flavors that you get when you lacto ferment something. And so just adding that drop in it, very few of my customers, if any, are going to say, oh yeah, that's a fermented mushroom vinaigrette. But they're going to know it's a mushroom. I intensified the flavor profile that we were going for. And that ultimately, by adding some salt to some scrap, makes for a stronger dish tenfold.
So fermented foods, they can be very scary to some people. They think of fermented foods, and kimchi is one of those things you think of, or you think of fish sauce. You think of these funky, intense, it's stinky feet. It's like farts. Like it's, and I get it. Sometimes there's some intense aromas, but I think of French cheeses, and some of the stinkiest cheeses are the sweetest, most delicious and delicate possible flavor profiles you can imagine. Fermentation is very similar. So this is my approach, and I'll kind of let you talk to it. I tell people all the time, it's like, you're into fermented foods. I bet you had coffee today. When's the last time you had some yogurt, chocolate? And they go, wait, what? I was like, fermentation is a technique used so broadly that you are probably consuming multiple fermented foods and not even realizing it. And so that's kind of the way that people go, oh, okay, well, tell me more. Do you have a way that you kind of navigate that conversation with people, getting them to trust you, I think is what it is.
I think we usually avoid the word fermented on the menu just because it does have that. We'll use the word soured a lot
lot because otherwise your menu would say fermented like 17 times.
Like a million. Yeah, exactly. But, I think, like you said, giving it to them in a way they can relate. Of course, kimchi is always one of the first ones that most people, but like you said, once you start talking about beer and all the things that people know about on a day-to-day basis and talking about how they got from, that's not a natural product. That's a product that went through a process.
Yes.
Giving them an idea that it isn't always funky. It isn't always, hit you in the face. Sometimes it's pretty subtle. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the changes that you get out of the product from just a little bit of fermentation can be pretty changing.
Yeah, I'm with that 100%. Your crew, as now fermentation is such the bedrock of your concept, clearly your ability to communicate the ethos of that, right? And then also the practical kind of techniques to it. So let's take some time. Let's take, 5 minutes or so. Like I want to dig into a little bit. Lot of cooks, a lot of emerging chefs that watch the show. I want to give them a little roadmap. Yeah, fermentation. I made a hot sauce one time. I made a kimchi one time. I don't know. But for you and I, it's like this is the future of food. Full stop. Fermentation is the future of food. The way that you go about that is multitudes of ways. For you, communicating with your team, new cook walks in the door. What's the conversation like? Let's take us through that process with getting somebody on board, and then we'll get into some techniques that you're trying to teach.
For sure. So we really do keep things pretty simple and explain to the cooks, what we are, and that is we're a business first and foremost. And I like to kind of teach my cooks the numbers game. That was something that I never learned as a chef growing up. It was something that I learned, from Jason, my business partner. But it's definitely something that I've grown and gained an appreciation for. And fermentation allows us an opportunity to make sure that the very expensive and labor-intensive products that we work with, that we get in, don't go to waste. And that not going to waste not only respects the ingredients at a new level, which hopefully brings my cooks, to respecting that ingredient in a whole new level, but it also stretches my bottom dollar, which is important. It makes the dish better in a multitude of ways. It makes my cook better because they appreciate the ingredients they got. They know the value that they have. And so, that's the first step, is explaining, hey, this isn't just a mushroom. This isn't just a potato. Somebody grew this potato and we paid a lot of money for this potato. And here's how we're going to respect how we got that. And so a lot of it is basic level introductory lacto fermentation. For the most part, we'll start off by saying, hey, we're going to add 2% salt to this. We do a lot of fermentation in the vacuum sealer.
Yep.
Bag it on high. We'll let it sit for 7 days. They always get, 5 to 7, depending on temperatures, but they always get amazed. Oh, the bag balloon. Like, it's right. It's introductory.
Have you had any explosions?
Maybe one or two, a couple. Yeah.
One of the early times messing with the vacuum sealer, and it was a kimchi that went long and exploded. And I come in the morning, my dishwasher is scraping what looks like red brain matter off of the ceiling. And I was not allowed to ferment things for a little while. My dishwasher put me on timeout. It was pretty intense. Anyway, so for you, I want to segue now. I want to get back to your people, but something you said really important. Money. Like, a business runs on money. Your ability to take the ridiculously slim margins within a restaurant and extend them. I'm interested in that, and I think people need to pay attention to that. There is a massive opportunity for money saving. Waste in your kitchen, if you get to 3, 4, 5% waste, which is averages that you see, and get that down to 1%, that's serious money. Like, you need to run that math. So I want to hover on that for a minute. How then do you also do something that I'm sure that you do? You're buying more than you need within a given season so that you get that product at peak. Cash flow, you're spending $1,000 instead of the $500 that you actually need of that product for this given quarter, right? What's the reasoning for the investment? Why not just spend the $500? You're spending $1,000 to then use that product in November. Give me the insight there versus like why you're investing that money now to then use it later.
The nice thing is that usually fermentation acts as a secondary product for something that we're looking to work with. So, right now we're actually getting ready to do some tasting menus for the first time since being closed down this weekend. And so we have had a few things kind of going in the works. And we've had a lot of berries in over the spring that we've kind of worked on jarring and canning and preserving in different ways. But we have a lot of scrap from that. And so, we made a summer berry or spring berry vinegar out of it. And so now we got the first product, right? But now I got a secondary product. I got something additional. So I am still going to make, as a chef, I'm still going to be able to turn around and get a product off the first thing, off the berries. But then in the wintertime, I'll have a summer berry vinegar or a wild berry vinegar, whatever we end up doing, that I'll be able to get another push of something off of. And that's ultimately what we look to do is, okay, how can I not only use this in November, but how can I get two productions off of this, two products off of this?
So and another layer to that I know that you're aware of, I want to make sure people know, is you're going to also get the best price, because if you're buying 100 pounds versus 10 pounds, we know price breaks at volume. So all of a sudden you're able to get that berry into the November menu at a low price because you bought at volume, or you took a small farmer's entire crop. Like things like that change the economics of it. Absolutely. Which is a very important thing to consider. And then you're not stuck trying to use berries from Chile in November that costs 3 times as much. You're using the fermentation. Do you also see an opportunity? Ramps. I think of ramps. We coming up as chefs would get ramps for 2 weeks in the springtime, and we would do 1,015 things with them, and then we'd always pickle them and then try and keep them towards the later in the season because they're really good, but also because ramps sell. Like the price point you can put on a menu item with ramps on it is up there, right? And Absolutely. So you see the opportunity for saying, here's a morel mushroom ferment in November that gets people going, wait a minute, I love morel mushrooms, and you get a little bit of kind of brand and like quality expectation from that, then you can charge for it.
Yeah, well, and if you're smart about it and you do something, that morel's driving the price point, that word sells, but you do it something with, an agreeable protein, all of a sudden you're able to really sell something with some excitement that you might not have had in it before. So there's always, the ability to, people see, like you said, see morels, see strawberries. We love using strawberries in January and February because people know we use local products. And how did we get that product if it's January and February? So we get to tell a story too. And those stories and being able to connect people to a product, to a farmer, ultimately is what people pay us for. So it's just a good business strategy. It's a good way to get my clients excited about how things got to their plate and how we work with these farmers and the connections that we've made with them to really represent the products that they've grown.
Let's go back to your staff, your team. How are you connecting that? So storytelling, clearly important. You're doing it through food, and then you're layering on top fermentation, which is something that is in your ethos. It's also practical. It's good business. It tells a compelling story, and it's delicious. So it checks a lot of boxes for you, which is why we're friends. It checks a lot of boxes, and I think more people need to pay attention to that. So when you're talking to your team and you're connecting them to the farmers, how are you going about that? And then I want you to also touch on, when you're talking about your farmers and your team, foraging, because I know you got a guy foraging for you as well. That I think is a whole nother level that people need to be thinking about in the industry.
Yeah, so we make really close connections with all of our purveyors, farmers, but even our plates in our restaurant are handmade by Iowa artisans. Our soaps, our candles are hand poured. And I think that's really important. That's the main driving point with what we do at Harbinger. It's all about Iowa. It's all about what we do, who we are, and how can we support our community. And so my guys know the guys that throw the plates. They know the guys that are pouring the candles. We go out and see the farms that we're working with. And just yesterday we went out about an hour south of Des Moines. I went chanterelle mushroom hunting with one of our farmer friends. So, it's always good for the crew to get out of the kitchen a little bit, and see beyond the four walls and see the whole entire process. So often as a chef, you're like locked in a kitchen. One of the first things I liked about my restaurant that we opened is we got a big old window so we could see into the outside world. And
Imagine
I think right. And that's nice. I love seeing the sun. And so we can look out into that world and kind of have connections with it. And so getting my cooks to appreciate, how the product got to us has been a huge point in getting their interest in making all the sacrifices that the restaurant takes to make, because we do work long hours. It's not, everyone knows it's not the highest paying industry. I tell my cooks, I try to teach chefs, not teach line cooks. So, they're there for the education, and I see it as my responsibility, just as the chefs that I worked under were able to teach me how important those connections are and how important that product is. I'm able to teach my cooks that. And so fermentation is a way to really expand on that respect for the ingredient and what we have to work with.
Does it make them better cooks?
Yeah.
And I asked that. I mean, I know the answer to that, and I'm going to frame it like this. You're not teaching them a knife skill. You're not teaching them how to baste fish. You're not teaching them any French or Japanese cooking terms through like the process of like, this is how you apporter something. Like the things that, were taught coming up or you're taught in school, you're teaching them something completely different. It is an ethos. It is a way of seeing your responsibility as a chef. It's the way of seeing the way that you interact with your community, with the land, with the food, with your guests. Does it make them a better cook? Why can it make them a better cook if it has nothing to do with cooking?
Yeah, I mean, even if you know how to cook a piece of fish, unless you care about it, you're going to fuck it up. My cooks all care about their food. I don't have anybody in my restaurant who has worked in a Michelin star restaurant. Most of my guys were green, were brand new into the kitchen, starting with me, and they've been with me, some of them upwards of the whole entire time of 3 years. But I could teach them to care. If I could teach them to care, then they care, and I could teach them how to cook a piece of fish. And getting them to care, and getting them to get to that point where they respect things and respect how I got to where I am, and respect how the product got into the restaurant, and respect the whole entire process, then it's just teaching them how to cook food.
And as we mentioned, from the business owner, chef owner standpoint, the food is the easy part. Easy. Yep. It's really, really hard, but it is the easy part in comparison because it's what it's come so natural. It's all the things that lead to it. We've been talking about on this show a lot. It's not what's on the plate. It's who gets it to the plate. That's what really, really matters. And that's clearly what you're really putting into your ecosystem, from the farmer, the forager, the guest, the staff itself. Let's talk about your team for these last couple minutes a little bit more. Who are introduce us to some of the people and why you as a leader are so lucky to have some of these people on your team. Who are some of the people in the kitchen, front of house? I can't remember who, but the bartender the night I was there was absolutely amazing, knew everything about the menu. Like, I was really, really impressed. So education and communication is clearly important. But who are some of those people? Tell us about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to sous chef A.U. Alvarez. A.U.'s been with me since the get-go. He's one of those kids that came into the restaurant with no kitchen experience. He started at the bottom. I think on week 2, he was in tears out of frustration. And he started in the middle of restaurant week.
Oh,
yeah. So he got thrown into the burners there right away. But he's climbed a long ways. He's put in a lot of sacrifices, a lot of time, and that's because he cares. And so, big shout out to him. He's really helped me through these last couple months, as has everyone. My front of the house manager, Caitlin Kennebeck, she's been with me, I think 2.5 years. 2.5. She started as, a server. She had been a cheesemonger before, obviously very passionate about food. But we brought her in. We took her to get her introduction for SOM test, and she's working towards getting her level 1. I took her to Japan in January to teach her a little bit about Asian cuisine. My kitchen's going to Vietnam. Well, we were supposed to go to Vietnam in January, but I don't see that happening, unfortunately. But I think, getting these guys in and trying to get them to get excited about learning, the ones that have stuck with me are the ones that want to learn. And AU and Caitlin are two of my strongest people. They both shown an incredible amount of initiative and excitement to learn. They've never said no to an opportunity, and I'm incredibly and eternally grateful for them.
It's awesome. I love that. Why is it important for you to take your team? You mentioned the window. I mean, I think now the number one takeaway, a lot of good stuff in here. The number one takeaway is put a fucking window in your kitchen. Can change everything. For you, getting them outside the four walls from the farms and all that, but you're going even further. You're taking them, transporting them to somewhere completely different where they can see not just humans doing what they do, but a completely different perspective on food, beverage, hospitality, all of that. Why is that a part of your business model?
I mean, you got to really love food and beverage to do this, to be in this game. It's not an easy job. Part of the reason that I am a chef, I do what I do is I love to eat. First and foremost, number one thing in my life, I love to eat and drink. I travel to eat and drink.
Yep.
And it's that passion that has allowed me to survive, the hardships that a lot of people drop out of. And trying to get that passion into them makes my team better. It makes them better cooks and gives them an insight into what it takes and what the possibilities are with it.
We'll end with this. It's preservation. That's what it is. You're preserving them. You're allowing them the opportunity to flourish in November. We've been talking about November a lot. I think that's amazing. Joe, really appreciate the conversation. We talked about this a little. This is even deeper. I really, really see how you connect all the dots to it. Everything you're doing is with intention, and it matters. And I can tell that, the food was of the utmost, the service, the expectation of quality, the team. When I watch a kitchen, I'm not watching what comes out of the kitchen. I'm watching the way that the cooks look at the food. And I could tell when I was there, they look at it with care. I mean, that was a great word. They had care for it. There was purpose in the way that they looked at it, not just putting it on the plate. So, Joe, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for talking, and keep doing what you're doing. Have a great day.
Hey, thanks for talking with me. It was a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Cheers. Bye. Yes. What it takes, care and preservation. Two big words, care and preservation. I think, Sophie, we're going to start a thesaurus or a dictionary of words. I think of words like momentum was an early on word that Kyle Hildebrand, who was on the show, put in my head. Motivation, grit came up. I love the word grit. We're going to care and preservation, two new words to the lexicon of best served. That's what we're going to do. We're going to create our own thesaurus of the important words within hospitality. So appreciate that. All right, Sophie. What is the one thing, come on in here, what is the one thing that you learned about fermentation after hearing from us?
So William put in, he was like, I actually understand you. And I was so ready when you said you were going to go deep. I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm here with my Google is up. I'm ready to Google these things. And I understood most of it, and I was so happy.
At certain times I was like, I'm going to go and I'm going to talk
ramps.
about some stuff that nobody's ever heard of.
Right.
And you know what? It just felt more natural just to stay on the surface and keep talking about the way it connects to their ethos, because it's clearly so important. He's a technician, but he's more of a philosopher. And so it felt more natural to stay in the philosophy.
He's got that degree.
Side of it. That's why I asked questions.
He learned, yeah.
Because
he got something out of college.
He's a philosopher, and he's applying that psychology more than he's applying technique, which is why I stuck with psychology. Look, I love it. Yeah. Somehow I get lucky at these things that work really, really well. So, all right, that's it for today. I'm going to work on staying under 30 minutes. That's our goal, Sophie, is under 30 minutes. And great. I'm glad everyone understood everything. Sophie, appreciate you. Joe, Tripp, amazing stuff. Great week thus far in Iowa, and we'll continue on tomorrow. That's it. That's all I got for you. Appreciate you guys. Cheers.